Instantly, I said to myself, the Bush administration has finally agreed to let the military build a forward base on the moon, which will put them in a better position to keep track of the goings and comings of the visitors from space, to shoot at them if they so decide. The plan was originally designed by Lieutenant General Arthur Trudeau, Colonel Rose Voss, in the 1960s. He proposed a highly detailed blueprint which rated a whole chapter under the heading Project Moonbase in the Colonel's book. It seems that once again the military has ultimately prevailed, and the project will go forward at an initial cost of $100 million US. That is a lot of money, enough to save the lives of millions of Earthlings dying from malnutrition and lack of medical treatment. Which is the higher priority? Reviewing the developments of the last half-century, it is obvious that the military has often been frustrated by the slow response to their request to meet the perceived threat from the aliens. But they ultimately succeeded when they get through to an overworked president who doesn't have enough time to read and think, and who may be more in awe of military experts, quote unquote, than some civilians with more time for reflection and assessment. The point is that there has been no public input, and there should be. The time has come to lift the veil of secrecy and let the truth emerge so there can be a real and informed debate about one of the most important problems facing our land today. Forgive me for stating the obvious, but it is quite impossible to have that kind of an informed debate about a problem that doesn't officially exist. Let me close by switching from the real to the hypothetical. Last Christmas I had the pleasure, actually, of reviewing a delightful little book entitled Exopolitics, Politics, Government, and Law in the Universe by Albert Weber. Weber postulates a universe that includes many planets sustaining life more advanced than our own, all subject to universal government based on the rule of law. Earth, he suggests, is an exception. Rather than being the center of the universe, as our ancestors believed, we are the black sheep of the interplanetary community. We have been quarantined and isolated from the, quote, highly organized, interplanetary, intergalactic, multidimensional universe society, end of quote. Presumably because our culture has been strongly influenced by rogue planetary leadership personified in the story of the Garden of Eden. To end the quarantine, Earthlings must advance morally and spiritually while re-establishing connection with interplanetary society. Until recently, we didn't have the technology to do the latter, but increasingly we do. Meanwhile, visits from our interplanetary neighbors present opportunities for peaceful communication and collaboration. People who believe in God, as I do, will find nothing in Weber's thesis inconsistent with their belief, although I admit it is a mighty big mind stretch. His proposal, however, I think is worth considering. He calls it, quote, a decade of contact. And on to quote, an era of openness, public hearings, public-funded research, and education about extraterrestrial reality. Who knows? That could be just the antidote the world needs to end this greed-driven, power-centered madness. Thank you.
just want to know if there are any members of the press who wish to approach the microphone. There's one over here. We'll take one question. I ask you to please identify yourself and the media outlet that you are
Stephen Humphrey, Now Magazine. In what you were talking about, you were, well, mainly, seem to be stating...
Sorry, I'm having trouble understanding.
Mainly seem to be commenting on what you found reasonable in other people's statements. And I'm wondering if there was anything that you wish you had done in light of your current interest as Minister of Defense, if there's anything that you had pursued or investigated.
Is there anything that the press should have done? Is that your question?
Yes.
I think they should have been far more critical of some of the pronouncements made by governments over the years and spent more time with investigative journalism and really going after some of the lies that the governments have been telling. I mean, it's not... Government telling lies is not unusual. It was, U2, for example, didn't exist. Mr. Khrushchev was assured by President Eisenhower until they shot down, and then all of a sudden they say, yes, it did exist. But this is sometimes the way governments work. I remember being on a television panel one day and asking the ambassador from the Soviet Union if they spied. And he said, no, we never spied. I didn't believe. I can't, did I get your question? Because it's almost impossible for me to hear up here.
Yeah, there's quite an echo, so I'll try to speak more slowly.
Maybe Vicar can translate the question for me.
Right. Well, I'm just wondering, when you had a position of responsibility in the government, in retrospect, if there's anything that you wish you had pursued in your career regarding UFOs.
Anything I could have done?
Anything that right now, in retrospect, maybe you could look further into or anything like that.
I don't think so in my case because, as I said, I was far too busy at the time. And then I got out of House of Commons since 1974, and just a bystander like yourself and what's been going on. And this has not been my principal concern. My forte, as they call it, is macroeconomics. And I have been spending most of my time trying to persuade people that we don't have to have recessions and depressions. We didn't have to have a recession in 1981-82. We didn't have to have a $500 billion debt. It was all unnecessary. It was all bad economics. And so I've been working at this, and I find great difficulty actually getting people to listen. Just as I guess the ufologists have had great difficulty getting people on the street to listen. Often like the ice glaze over, but we have had incredibly bad economic management for decades, and now we're suffering from it. And so that has been my principal preoccupation, and it's only recently, and thanks to a few people here today, that I've become interested in what I believe now is a very important issue facing the whole planet.
If it's just me, I'll ask one more question. Is there anything that you can see in Canadian activities or participation in NORAD or anything like that that to you strikes us as participating in, I don't know what, UFO-related covert activity?
I'm not sure what you mean by inconsistently, but certainly NORAD, part of NORAD's function will be to track everything in the sky, including space. So in that sense, we will be involved.
Okay, thank you.